The top stories tonight in Y News. President Rodrigo Duterte to propose to Congress to abolish the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation or PhilHealth.
Itong PhilHealth I'm going to propose to Congress to abolish kung i-privatize mo naman, walang pera. Sino insurance mo? Kung sabihin ng mga kapitalista sa insurance, kami ang magbayad. Pero wala kayong pundo.
Several groups call on the government to review the quarantine guidelines for mild and asymptomatic COVID-19 cases.
Corrupt government officials should be the ones thinking of resigning and not President Rodrigo Duterte, according to Senate President Vicente Soto III. Department of Transportation set to implement mandatory use of beep cards on the EDSA busway route starting October 1. Passengers favor the no beep card, no ride policy, while bus personnel are complaining.
More foreign groups approved to enter Thailand.
Australia records its lowest population growth rate since World War I. Meanwhile, new research data forecasts a deficit of 280,000 babies by 2024 in Australia. Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Tuesday, September 29, 2020. I am Harleen Delgado.
Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the country and in other parts of the world. I'm Angelo Castro III.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I am William Theo.
First in the news, President Rodrigo Duterte will propose to Congress to abolish the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation or PhilHealth. The president also reveals that the government has to sell its real estate properties to other countries. Rosalie Cos explains why.
President Rodrigo Duterte said he wants to create a new agency to replace the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation instead of privatizing it. The chief executive said he will begin through a reorganization and revamp in the state health insurer.
Itong PhilHealth I'm going to propose to Congress to abolish kung i-privatize mo naman, walang pera. Sino insurance mo? Kung sabihin ng mga kapitalista sa insurance, kami ang magbayad. Pero wala kayong pundo.
The chief executive reiterates nothing will happen if the old setup will stay in the state health insurance.
Talagang either I'm going to revamp, consider everybody resign there, and if there is this structure, we can slowly and yung disband yung ibang just a simple. I mean, as simple as it could ever be. That's what I mean.
The president also reveals that the government has to sell its real estate properties to other countries just to fund the state health insurance. The ultimatum of the president to new PhilHealth chief Dante Gueran stays. Gueran has to clean up the agency before 2020 ends. And according to the palace, we may expect more employees and officials to be removed since investigations against irregularities and corruptions in the agency persist. Malacanang believes President Duterte is serious when he stated his frustration over corruption within the government, but Roque believes the president will not resign.
Mukhang hindi naman po dahil gagamitin nga niya yung natitira niyang 2 taon para linisin ang gobyerno.
Rosalie Cos, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
A lawmaker requests the Budget Department to triple the budget allocation for small business or SB corporations, which aims to assist micro, small to medium enterprises in all areas and operates under the Trade and Industry Department. Ray Pelayo explains why.
Out of the more than 11 billion pesos requested by the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority or TESDA from the Budget Department that will be used to support scholars, only 5 billion pesos was approved. Makati Representative Luis Campos Jr., the sponsor of the TESDA's proposed budget, says that the budget cut is seen to affect more than 200,000 individuals who could avail training programs from the agency.
Approximately ang maapektuhan ho nasa over 200,000 individuals na hindi makakatanggap ng tamang scholarship for training programs.
Representative Subiri is pushing for the increase of DTI's budget, especially for SB Corporation, who aims to extend loans for micro, small, medium enterprises or MSMEs, which number around 1.4 million. According to DTI, 94% of MSMEs in the country are now operational but still need support. The Department of Budget and Management has allotted only 1.5 billion pesos for SB Corporation's budget for next year. But for Bukidnon 3rd District Representative Manuel Zubiri, this is not enough.
Kumikita ba sila o hindi? That is another question. Kailangan ba nila ng seed fund o kailangan ba nila ng tulong? Definitely, kailangan po nila ng tulong.
Zubiri has requested in the plenary to triple the budget of SB Corporation.
Who will pay taxes next year if we don't help them?
Small Business Corporation is a government financial institution created in January 1991 under RA 6977 Magna Carta for Small Enterprises, amended by RA 8289 in 1997 and RA 9501 in 2008. Its primary responsibility is to implement comprehensive policies and programs to assist MSMEs in all areas, including finance and information services, training, and marketing. Ray Pelayo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Several groups call on the government to review the quarantine guidelines for mild and asymptomatic COVID-19 cases. Joanne Nano tells us why.
The Healthcare Professionals Alliance Against COVID-19 or HPAC recognizes the importance of mandatory quarantine for COVID-19 positive patients even if they are mild and asymptomatic. However, they are asking the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases to review its policy of restricting home quarantine and requiring all COVID-19 patients to quarantine themselves within government's isolation facilities. The HPAC argues that patients with no comorbidities should be exempt from the no-home quarantine policy. Their appeal includes patients who are capable to isolate themselves within their homes. The group explains that requiring patients to transfer to government isolation facilities might cause fear among people to submit themselves to COVID-19 testing.
From the health perspective, isa po dun sa mga posible kasing mangyari dito yung sa takot na lamang ay hindi mag-disclose ang tao na sila ay may nararamdaman o kaya hindi na magpa-test kasi nga ito na po ang ating patakaran ngayon.
Some civil society groups have the same call and emphasize that the government should focus more on patients who are incapable of going in-home quarantine because of their social status. For sentro ng mga nagkakaisa at progresibong mga manggagawa, the government should reconsider its quarantine protocols.
Para sa mga manggagawa po, ang ibig sabihin po ng improve isolation na policies ay may malinaw na standard. Hindi lang basta ipaubaya ng Department of Health sa mga local government yung pag-create ng isolation. Ng aming pong mga kasapian ay nakaranas na isolate dahil close contact ng COVID-19 na patient, pero breakfast tsaka dinner lang yung meron at pinapakain sa kanila sa isolation facilities.
Youth group PUP Students Party for Equality and Advancement of Knowledge expresses its worries for their welfare in case their parents become COVID-19 patients and required to isolate themselves in government's facilities.
It also stresses and registers that this also calls for a dire need to cater to the needs of the children and youth sector na may iwanan ng kanilang magulang. Because some children will be left to themselves, walang mag-aalaga, walang magbabantay, at walang mag-aasikaso if their parents will be isolated.
Under IATF Resolution number 74, the no-home quarantine policy is strictly enforced. However, there are some exemptions depending on the patient's condition. The IATF has yet to come up with the revised guidelines for new quarantine protocols. The government came up with the no-home quarantine policy due to a significant number of cases of transmission within households. Joanna Nano, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, Manila City opens another swab testing laboratory. It will cater to not just Metro Manila residents, and its services are for free. Dante Amento details why.
The Manila City government wants to strengthen its COVID-19 mass testing efforts. Mayor Francisco Isko Moreno Dumagoso and Vice Mayor Sheila Hani Lacuna Pangan led the launching of the city's second swab testing laboratory this morning at the Santa Ana Hospital. The new lab has 2 machines, which the Departments of Health and Budget gave. Each machine can process about 1,000 swab tests a day. Mayor Dumagoso says the city government did not spend for the 8.5 million peso facility even the construction. The mayor adds they will offer the swab testing for free not only for Manileños but also for residents of other cities and towns.
We, Hani and I, decided to shoulder the cost to any person, and it's very expensive, but anyway, pera naman ng taong bayan yan. They deserve better things from their government.
Meanwhile, the 525-bed mega quarantine facility in Soler inside the Nayong Pilipino in Parañaque City was inaugurated and turned over to the national government this morning. The facility is now ready to accept asymptomatic and mild COVID-19 patients from Metro Manila and nearby provinces Bulacan, Cavite, Laguna, Batangas, Rizal, and Quezon. It is currently the biggest quarantine facility in Metro Manila. National Action Plan Against COVID-19 Deputy Chief Implementer Secretary Vince Dizon says that the National Capital Region now has a total capacity of 28,000 beds in COVID-19 quarantine facilities.
Pero like we said, kailangan tuloy-tuloy pa rin tayong gumawa. Kasi mas mabuti nang ready tayo at meron tayo kesa yung tumaas ang kaso at wala tayong gagamitin. Yun ang critical ngayon, no? Kailangan prepared tayo.
Meanwhile, Presidential Spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque slams the opposition for saying that the administration is not making efforts to fight COVID-19.
We're already in the second phase of the National Action Plan. We're already drafting the third phase of the National Action Plan. Unfortunately, I regret that the opposition is not even aware of Plan 1, Plan 2, and Plan 3.
Dante Amento, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Meanwhile, more than 200 accredited hotel and resort accommodations have been granted certificate to operate for when Boracay Island opens on the 1st of October. Tourists may choose from more than 4,000 rooms for their vacation, but there's a limit. Only 2 persons are allowed per room. Alas, over 300 bars and restaurants will open for tourists. Only tourists from areas under General Community Quarantine or GCQ and Modified General Community Quarantine or MGCQ are allowed to come to the island. Partying is still prohibited. An 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. curfew will be implemented. Swimming is allowed only between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Minors and senior citizens won't be allowed to enter the island. Tourists from other regions must be able to present a negative swab test result. A no booking, no entry policy will be executed.
Meanwhile, the country's Department of Health says that 2,025 new cases were reported today, with the National Capital Region logging the most additional cases, but just over 600, unlike in the previous days. Now, the total confirmed cases of coronavirus infection in the Philippines increases to more than 309,000. The Philippines is number 21 among countries with the largest caseload, just below Italy's more than 311,000. The total active cases increased from yesterday to 50,925, of which 86.5% are in mild condition, while 8.8% are asymptomatic. We have lost 68 more patients. But through our fervent prayers, medical interventions, and sacrifices of our medical frontliners, 290 more people have won their battle against the invisible enemy. That brings the total recoveries nationwide to 252,930. Thanks be to God.
Let's now take a closer look at the updated count of coronavirus cases around the world. The global death count from COVID-19 has surpassed 1 million today. That is out of the more than 33.3 million confirmed coronavirus cases in 188 countries, regions, and sovereignties. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres calls it a mind-numbing figure and an agonizing milestone. Over 302,000 additional cases have been reported across various countries since yesterday, while a total of more than 23.1 million patients across the globe have recovered from the new coronavirus infection. Thanks be to God. Malacanang says President Rodrigo Duterte's statement against Facebook is not a threat to ban the social media giant in the Philippines. Meanwhile, the government is considering to choose its own fact-checkers on Facebook. Our Palace correspondent, Rodrigo, tells us why.
After the statements made by President Rodrigo Duterte against Facebook, some people have expressed concerns over the possible banning of the use of the social media site in the Philippines. Last night, President Duterte questioned Facebook on its purpose of being in the country if it cannot help the government in promoting its advocacy against communist rebels. The president's reaction came after Facebook's purging of more than 100 accounts in the country for allegedly violating Facebook's policy on interference and coordinated inauthentic behavior or CIB campaign, in which some accounts are allegedly linked to the military and the police. According to Malacanang, the chief executive just wants to talk with Facebook about the social media giant's policies on censoring pages supportive of the government. One of the pages taken down by Facebook is Hands Off Our Children. The Facebook page aims to prevent minors from being recruited by organizations espousing violent extremism.
You cannot lay down a policy for my government. I allow you to operate here. You cannot bar or prevent me from espousing the objectives of government.
Number one po kasi sa buong mundo tayo sa Facebook, no? So, kung mawawala tayo, malaking kawala po yan sa Facebook, pero at the same time, dahil number one nga tayo, marami rin Pilipinong gumagamit ng Facebook na maapektuhan din, no? So, ang sabi naman ng Presidente, pag-usapan yan.
Meanwhile, Malacanang questions anew the fact-checkers chosen by Facebook who are against the government, such as online news platforms Rappler and Vera Files. According to presidential spokesperson Roque, the government is considering to choose its own fact-checkers on the social media platform like what other countries have been doing.
Pag-aaralan po natin kung dapat gawin na natin yan dahil hindi naman tayo makakapayag ng fact-checkers tanging mga laban lamang sa gobyerno.
Rosa Licoz, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, the Armed Forces of the Philippines, or AFP, say that they are one with the president in his call for FB executives to sit down and discuss with the government how the Filipinos will benefit from the popularity of the social media giant and its presence in the Philippines. The AFP thanks the president's expression of support to its campaign, which it says may well be every Filipino's war against the communist terrorist group NPA. to include affiliated underground mass organizations. In a statement, the country's armed forces say that they view Facebook and other social media outfits as platforms to disseminate accurate information that would empower our people to see through the lies and reject terrorist organizations masquerading as pro-people. The AFP appeals to FB executives to look into the contents of the accounts of groups that have been taken down, like Hands Off Our Children, which is the aggregation of parents bound by the NPA's deadly and deceptive recruitment of their children. Meanwhile, some senators reacted to the revelation of President Rodrigo Duterte last night that he offered to resign due to his frustrations over the rampant corruption in the government. The president admitted that he is sick of corruption and that there is no way to stop it. He further appealed to lawmakers to help him fight corruption and even offered to appear before Congress.
Ayaw ko kung sabihin ko ito sa inyo. I offered to resign as president. Pinatawag ko yung lahat ng sabi ko na kasi nagsasawa na ako. In my years of government, talagang wala nang katapusan itong corruption. Mahirap talaga pigilin.
But according to Senate President Vicente Soto III, it is the corrupt officials in the government that should be thinking of resigning and not the president. Soto says that President Duterte cannot turn his back from Filipinos being an elected official. Meanwhile, for Senator Panfilo Lacson, the president only needs to be consistent in applying the anti-corruption laws to both his friends and enemies instead of resigning. Lacson adds it may be not necessary for the president to appear before a congressional hearing. Earlier today, a Senate panel has begun its hearing on the proposed measure seeking to authorize the president to expedite the processing and issuance of national and local permits and licenses. Senate Majority Leader Miguel Zubiri expressed his frustrations on the implementation of the Ease of Doing Business law, which he principally authored. Zubiri believes there is a communication problem between the president and the anti-red tape authority in discussing the powers provided in the law. ARTA says processes in agencies and local government units have been streamlined and they are now gearing toward automation of transactions through their e-programs. ARTA Director General Attorney Jeremiah Belhica adds they have already responded to almost 4,000 complaints in various government agencies. The senators also reminded the executive department that the president has the power to suspend and even remove government officials who will be proven guilty of corruption.
The president has all the powers: discipline, run the bureaucracy, manage the bureaucracy. Hindi po kailangan ang bagong batas. Ang kapangyarihan po na nasa Pangulo.
Kaya hindi ko maintindihan when he comes out with sheer frustration on a particular agency. He has the power to suspend everybody there. He has the power to remove the secretary. He has the power to act on these particular cases within the agency itself.
The Philippine National Police Highway Patrol Group reminds that it is the responsibility of motorists to know the changes in traffic rules and changes including the U-turn slot closures on EDSA, which began yesterday. Leia Ilagan tells us why.
The PNP Highway Patrol Group inspected the closed U-turn slot on EDSA North Avenue today, but some motorists were still unaware of the closure.
Hindi ko po kasi alam, sir, dahil first ngayon lang po kasi ako napadaan, sir, humingi na lang ako ng sorry po. U-turn sana ako, sir, kaya sorry na lang po.
Hindi po, sir, mag-u-turn po sana ako, sir. Hindi kasi namin alam, sir, nalilito rin po kami.
PNP HPG Director Police Brigadier General Eliseo Cruz said it is the motorist's responsibility to know the new regulations on EDSA implemented by the Transportation Department and the Metropolitan Manila Development Authority or MMDA.
Hindi na pwedeng sabihin hindi nila alam kasi pagka ganyan na ang busway para lamang sa bus. So maraming violation na pwede nating ibigay sa kanila. Kailangan sundin natin yung batas traffic.
The PNP HPG reminded the motorists about the closure, but still issued citation tickets to those who used the bus lane. The Highway Patrol Group also clarified that they will be the one who will investigate and file cases against motorists who will be involved in barrier accidents on EDSA.
Yun ang naging arrangement namin sa MMDA na for every time that there is a road cross na involving especially yung mga barriers na nilatag ng DOTR ng MMDA, kami na yung magpa-file ng case doon sa involved driver for reckless imprudence resulting to damage to property. So kami na yung mahawak ng kaso.
This is because some motorists in EDSA barrier incidents only pay for the destroyed barriers and do not face complaints.
Hindi naman nadadala yung mga driver, so dapat nakakasuhan din para talagang mag-ingat sila sa pagmamaneho.
Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Department of Transportation will implement the mandatory use of beep cards on the EDSA busway route starting October 1st. Passengers favor the no beep card, no ride policy, while bus personnel are complaining. Asher Kadapan Jr. explains to us why.
Starting Thursday, the 1st of October, passengers who do not have beep cards will no longer be allowed to ride any of the buses that take the EDSA busway route. According to the Department of Transportation, this is an additional safety measure against further transmission of SARS-CoV-2. DOTR Assistant Secretary Alberto Suansing explained that the public has been given ample time to adapt to the system as this has been implemented since the resumption of public transport in Metro Manila in June to promote cashless transactions.
Hindi mo alam kung saan galing yung pera, kung sino huling humawak, yung gano'n, kung meron pang may sakit yung humawak. So to lessen the transmission, so we decided na umpisahan natin yung beep card, mandatory.
To avoid delays and inconvenience, public commuters are encouraged to buy or load their beep cards before traveling. Beep cards are available at all stations of LRT and MRT, some convenience stores, 300 buy-it centers, Beep self-service kiosk, or through online banking with loading partners of Beep. A Beep seller is also available in every EDSA busway station. A minimum of a 20 peso credit can be loaded. New Beep cards may be purchased for 150 pesos, which include a 100 peso credit that may instantly be used for the bus fare. The remaining 50 pesos will serve as a joining fee and is non-refundable. The card may also be used for elevated mass rail transits in Metro Manila, such as the LRT 1, 2, and MRT 3, a number of point-to-point buses, and modern public utility vehicles across the country. Despite the additional cost, passengers are eager to comply with the automated fare collection system for their own safety.
Okay lang yun, sir, para maiwasan yun sa sakit na hawakan natin sa kamay, doon sa pera. Hindi natin alam kung saan nanggagaling yung pera. Mas malam mo may sakit.
On the other hand, bus drivers and conductors complain about the hampered boarding and alighting of passengers as the fare collection machine takes a few seconds to read the cards.
Mabagal ang beep. Matagal magbaba kasi pila-pila pagbaba, pag-akyat pila-pila din, matagal yung reading ng beep.
The DOTR also plans on implementing the system on other routes aside from the EDSA busway. Asher Kadapan Jr., UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Department of Tourism issues strict guidelines for staycations within areas under general community quarantine as approved by the IATF against COVID-19. The administrative order allows staycations for persons of all ages except those with underlying medical conditions for a minimum of an overnight stay for leisure purposes. The guidelines include the requirement for each guest to present a negative result from a rapid antigen test conducted on the same day of check-in. Contactless and cashless transactions for taking bookings and payments are also mandatory to promote minimal physical contact among staff and guests. Establishments must also follow the guidelines on guest handling, which include the limited number of guests per room and strict observance of health and safety standards set primarily by the Department of Health, as well as the rules and regulations imposed by the respective local government unit. DOT Secretary Bernadette Romulo Puyat explains that allowing staycations contributes to slow but safe resumption of tourism in the country and finally bring back jobs to our workers in the industry. Now, here's a glimpse of what's the weather like in parts of the country. The southwest monsoon or hanging habagat is affecting the western section of the Philippines. State Weather Bureau Pagasa says this will bring cloudy skies with scattered rain showers and thunderstorms over western Visayas, Zamboanga Peninsula, Bangsamoro, Soxcargen, and Palawan. Meanwhile, Metro Manila and the rest of the country will experience partly cloudy to cloudy skies with isolated rain showers due to the southwest monsoon or localized thunderstorms. Possible flash floods or landslides may occur during severe thunderstorms. No tropical cyclone advisory is issued.
The Department of Health explains that private companies may implement a lockdown, but the employees' mental health must be monitored. Our health correspondent Aiko Miguel tells us why.
Private companies, even in the health sector, have sets of strategies executed to prevent COVID-19 transmission in workplaces. One of those is lockdown. This measures aims to limit the movement of employees outside offices and avoid exposure to other people to keep the virus away. According to the Department of Health, a building or company lockdown is not prohibited by the government, but the DOH advises companies to consider the health of employees, especially their mental health.
Katulad ng isang ospital, for example, may mga ibang ospital that they would rather have their employees stay with them. They have a dormitory. Wala mo nang uuwi dito muna kasi kapag umuwi kayo sa community, you go back at nadadala nyo ang mga infection dito.
The DOH also says employers should explain well why a lockdown is important, especially to employees who will be included in the lockdown, considering it is difficult on the employees' part to be away from their families during a pandemic. According to the DOH, workers who experience anxiety or extreme sadness should consult a doctor or an expert to help them manage their situation.
Kailangan nga meron talagang mga nilalagay na mga programa ang mga employers nila na talagang makakapag-maintain na maayos ang mental health ng mga employees na yan because they are away from their family. Lagi niyo pong tatandaan, hindi porke tumatawag kayo doon sa hotline natin for the mental health, ay kayo ay siraulo, no? Lagi natin sinasabi, it is okay not to be okay, especially at this time of our situation in the pandemic. Okay lang po yan, lahat po tayo nakakaramdam ng ganyan. You just need to have that coping mechanism.
The DOH also says the duration of lockdown depends on the agreement between employers and employees, whether it takes months or a year. But employees on lockdown should still observe the health protocols. Even those who will be allowed to go home or go out once in a while should follow the minimum health standards. A 14-day quarantine must be in effect to prevent any virus carrier from placing others' health at risk. Based on the joint memorandum circular of the Department of Trade and Industry and the Department of Labor and Employment, health protocols should still be observed in workplaces, especially physical distancing. According to experts, the more distant a person is from another, the less possibility of COVID-19 transmission. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Philippine Statistics Authority will start the registration for the national ID system this October. The government will target to register 5 million low-income family heads for this year. Vincent Arboleda will tell us why.
The government will prioritize the heads of low-income families during the registration of 5 million individuals for the launch of the Philippine Identification or National ID system this October. According to National Economic and Development Authority under Secretary Rose De Leon, this is to help the low-income families receive aid from the government faster.
The target is really to register heads of household. Okay? Kasi we also want to link this to their opening of bank accounts so that later on we will have the distribution of the assistance would be easier.
Interior Undersecretary Jonathan Malaya says the government is targeting to register 5 million individuals this year. NEDA also clarifies that for the pre-registration, only the socio-demographic profile of an individual will be taken, such as the age, gender, level of education, and level of income. The launch in October of the national ID system will be conducted in 32 provinces in the country with low cases of COVID-19. NEDA says a schedule will be created for the registration process. It will be executed in a staggered manner to prevent virus transmission during the process.
We want this initiative to be safe for both the public, for those who will be registering, pre-registering, and then also for the PSA personnel.
The Philippine Statistics Authority is coordinating with various local governments for the needed manpower, transportation, crowd control, and other logistic needs for the registration process.
So tuloy na po ito until we are able to initially register the 5 million pre-registrants and 5 million registrants before the end of the year. And the rest of the country will be done by next year.
Vincent Arboleda, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
President Rodrigo Duterte appeals anew to telecommunication companies to improve their services for the opening of classes on October 5, 2020. The chief executive has been complaining of the services of telcos since 2016. He has even threatened telcos of closure. However, the president also admits the problems faced by telcos in relation to building their towers in various parts of the country.
I just appeal to yung mga telecommunications to can you do a better job? Is there life after this kind of service that you are delivering to the public? Kasi kung kaya ko lang na mag-isang salita nandiyan na kaagad, matagal na itong tapos itong problema ng Pilipinas.
The National Water Resources Board, or NWRB, will decrease the water allocation for Metro Manila from October 1. This after the water level in Angat Dam dropped from 46 cubic meters per second. Metro Manila's water allocation will be lowered by 2 cubic meters per second. But according to Maynilad and Manila Water, no water service interruption will be implemented since the water supply will be sufficient. The water allocation for irrigation will also be reduced. At 6 a.m. today, Angat Dam's water level was at 177.94 meters, which is lower than its minimum operating level of 180 meters. The Philippine Institute for Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS, monitors 4 volcanoes that are currently at an abnormal level. In today's Senate hearing on the proposed 2021 budget of the Department of Science and Technology, PHIVOLCS officer in charge, Undersecretary Renato Solidum, said these are the Taal Volcano in Batangas, Mayon Volcano in Albay, Mount Bulusan in Sorsogon, and Canlaon Volcano on Negros Island. According to Solidum, of the 4 volcanoes, they have seen some slight change in the volcanic activity of Taal Volcano in the past weeks, while Mount Mayon volcano is slightly inflating from its base. The 4 volcanoes that are currently at alert level 1 may have a steam-driven explosion where hot magma boils up the water and cause explosion. The agency reminds residents near the said volcanoes not to enter the danger zones.
And for the news abroad, here's Kath Demaraos reporting live from Bangkok, Thailand.
The Center for COVID-19 Situation Administration, or CCSA, approved in principle the entry of foreign nationals to Thailand, including business visitors and tourists, yesterday, 28th of September. The aim is to help the country's economy recover due to the damage done by the coronavirus pandemic. CCSA spokesman Tawisil Wisanayotin said that easing of travel restrictions was necessary to help many businesses, and Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha endorsed a proposal to welcome foreign visitors in the country. Groups which are approved for entry to Thailand are business people without a work permit, long-stay tourists with a special tourist visa, holders of an Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation business travel card from low-risk countries, foreigners who wish to stay in Thailand for at least 60 days, foreign athletes participating in a cycling event, and pilots and crew of Thai Airways International on repatriation flights. Dr. Tawisil also mentioned that every group would be required to observe disease control measures, and some groups would need to provide a 6-month bank statement proving funds of at least 500,000 baht. The initial easing of travel restrictions, which took effect last August 4, allowed entry to some foreigners, such as those with work permit and has permanent residency in Thailand. South Korean authorities appealed to residents today to continue observing social distancing measures even as they prepared to celebrate a major holiday which begins tomorrow. Chuseok, or Korean Thanksgiving Day, is one of the biggest and most important holidays in Korea. Family members from near and far come together to share food. But with the coronavirus threat still up, people are advised to stay at home and shun gatherings, although millions are still expected to travel across the country. As of today, South Korea has 23,699 confirmed cases with 407 deaths. Let's now take a closer look at the updated count of coronavirus cases in countries worst hit by the pandemic. The United States of America's total case count of COVID-19 has reached almost 7.15 million as of today. The U.S. still has the highest death toll among countries turned upside down by the pandemic, with more than 205,000. The region of the Americas remain to be the World Health Organization with the most cases, with over 16.4 million to date. The current COVID-19 recession is expected to leave Australia with a smaller economy and an older population. Joining us tonight is one of our correspondents in Australia, Marvy Delfin, to tell us why live. Marvy?
Population growth rate since World War I. The COVID-19 pandemic has delivered a substantial blow to Australia's population growth and fertility rate, with fewer babies born over the next 2 years. Experts say it will take decades to recover and have broader implications, according to demographers. New research data from the Government Centre for Population has forecasted a deficit of 280,000 babies by 2024. Due to couples delaying the expansion of their family because of the economic climate. The analysis also suggests that the country will see 56,000 fewer babies being born in each of the next 5 years than predicted in 2019. This poses a fresh challenge for National Treasurer Josh Frydenberg ahead of the October 6 federal budget, which is expected to show a deficit in excess of 85 billion Australian dollars. Minister for Population, Cities and Urban Infrastructure Alan Tudge said that while fertility rates tend to slow in times of economic uncertainty, on the other hand, the lack of migration is a main contributor to Australia's declining population growth. overseas migration by skilled workers, backpackers, and international students, which drives 60% of Australia's population growth, is set to collapse from 154,000 in the last financial year to just 31,000 in 2020 to 2021. The other 40% of Australia's population growth is accounted for by natural increase, births minus deaths. Figures issued by the Bureau of Statistics this week indicate that in March, Australia had its smallest natural increase in 14 years, with 136,600, down by 4.9%. From the last census, the top 5 countries where Australia's population was born overseas are United Kingdom, New Zealand, China, India, and the Philippines. There were 305,500 babies born in the year to March, and there were 168,600 deaths in the past year. Due to the aging population of Australia and aged care-related COVID-19 fatalities, deaths will continue to grow. With migrations fall, it seems the only way for the government to offset this increase in deaths is via more babies. Kath?
Marvi, Australia is not alone, as we have seen other countries also experiencing an economic wipeout from the coronavirus pandemic. How does the Australian government plan to address the downturn in migration due to the tough border closures and travel limits imposed amid the baby deficit?
Kath, certainly immigration has long been an important foundation for Australia's economic development and prosperity, but the COVID-19 restrictions have caused a dramatic slowing of overseas arrivals. The loss of inbound migrants has been problematic for farmers here down under, who are facing worker shortages, especially for fruit picking. With fewer migrant workers, backpackers, and international student laborers available. And so the Morrison government has proposed a reset of the migration program that will feature in the upcoming October 6 federal budget. We are yet to see how the current circumstances will be reconciled by then, but the immigrant community hopes that there will be more provision of more information and transparency on skills shortages at this time of high and rising unemployment. Kath?
Thank you, Marvi, for that report live from Perth, Australia. Judge Amy Coney Barrett continues to receive embrace from U.S. President Donald Trump as his nominee for the Supreme Court Justice to replace late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. President Donald Trump continues to praise Judge Amy Coney Barrett, who has become a favorite among the conservatives. President Trump describes Judge Barrett as one of the nation's most brilliant and gifted minds, adding to similarly dare the Democrats to try to block or delay her confirmation. Meanwhile, Judge Barrett acknowledges that the road ahead won't be easy, but she will meet the challenges with humility and courage, she says. If Judge Barrett wins the seat, she would be the 5th woman to serve on the Supreme Court. For now, the White House has already set up meetings for Barrett on the Capitol Hill, which is the first step towards Senate confirmation. And those are the reasons behind the news here in Thailand and in other parts of the globe. Back to you, William.
Thank you, Kath Damaraos, reporting live from Bangkok, Thailand.
A new study says that teens and people in early 20s with high cholesterol are at risk of having heart attack and stroke during middle age. Jovic Burmas tells us why.
In a recent study published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, researchers at the University of Maryland School of Medicine, or UMSM, found that having elevated cholesterol at a young age increases a person's risk of having a heart attack, stroke, or other cardiovascular event during middle age. Even though some people are able to get their low-density lipoprotein or LDL, the so-called bad type of cholesterol, before reaching their late 30s, still this increased risk persists. This new landmark study, entitled Time Course of LDL Cholesterol Exposure and Cardiovascular Disease Event Risk, with data coming from the Coronary Artery Risk Development in Young Adults study, makes a more valid reason for doctors to treat early high levels of LDL. The study authors also contend this finding provides guidance for future intervention studies aimed at preventing the global epidemic of cardiovascular diseases, as it remained the biggest health-related cause of death in the world. Dr. Michael Domansky, the study leader and a professor of medicine at UMSM, said having an elevated LDL cholesterol level at a young age raises the risk of developing heart disease, and the elevated risk persists even in those who were able to later lower their LDL cholesterol levels. The researchers conducted the study by using complex mathematical modeling to understand how the cardiovascular risk with increasing cumulative exposure to LDL cholesterol over an average of 22 years. To lower the high LDL levels during teenage years, the American College of Cardiology still recommends using lifestyle measures such as exercise, maintaining a healthy body mass index, and following a healthy diet low in saturated animal fats. Jovic Bermas, UNTV News and Rescue, we serve the people, we give glory to God.
And those are the reasons behind the news, September 29, 2020. I am Harleen Delgado.
Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I'm Angelo Castro III.
Because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.